Nobody in the restaurant had the faintest idea who the quiet man in the corner was. To them, he was just another late-night customer, one more face under the tired yellow lights, wrapped in a plain jacket that had seen years of use. He sat alone, a half-empty mug of coffee in front of him, steam long gone. Outside, the neon sign buzzed, its red glow painting the glass with the word "Diner" in flickering strokes. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of fried onions and black coffee. The background hum of voices and silverware carrying a kind of comfort only small-town places seemed to hold. He didn't look like someone who wanted attention. His posture was relaxed, shoulders a little slouched, hands steady around the mug. He hadn't spoken since he walked in. He'd nodded politely at the waitress, ordered coffee, then retreated into the kind of silence people in that town usually respected. But tonight, silence was going to be the very thing that set him apart. The owner of the place was a man who hated quiet. Mid-50s, heavy in the middle, sleeves rolled high to show forearms that weren't nearly as strong as he believed. His hair was thinning but slicked back with effort. He thrived on being the loudest presence in the room. It wasn't enough to run the restaurant, he needed to perform in it. And when he saw the solitary figure in the corner booth, something in him decided this man would be his target. "Look at this one," the owner said, voice booming over the chatter. He gestured broadly, like a showman calling for applause. "Too important to sit at the counter with everyone else, huh?" A few people chuckled, mostly out of habit. The man in the corner didn't respond. He lifted the mug, took a small sip, and set it back down. His stillness stretched into the room. The owner smirked. "You know what folks around here forget? Legends. Heroes. That's just movie stuff. Ain't no legends in real life." His eyes fixed on the booth. "Not in this town. Not in this world." This time the laughter was louder. Phones rose, small red lights blinking as people recorded. One of the waitresses frowned, her hands stalling on the tray she carried. She knew better than to intervene, but something in her face betrayed recognition. If not of the man, then of the weight in his silence. The owner leaned closer, his voice sharp. "Tell me, old man, how many people you knock out this year? Or do you only fight when there's a camera crew around?" His words sliced through the room. Some customers laughed, others shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether they were supposed to. Finally, the man in the corner raised his eyes. Slowly, calmly. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked. And that look carried more force than any words could have. The laughter faltered. A fork clattered against a plate. The air seemed to thicken, caught between noise and silence. The owner hesitated, just for a second, then forced a laugh. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" His own voice sounded too loud in the hush that had settled. He was performing now for himself more than the crowd. At that moment, one of the busboys, barely 20, skinny, nervous, stepped forward. "Maybe you should leave him alone, boss," he said, not loud, but everyone heard. The owner's head snapped around. "You want to keep your job? Then shut your mouth." His bark echoed through the restaurant. The boy shrank back, face burning. The cruelty landed harder than the owner realized. Even those who had been laughing earlier now stared at their plates. And still, the man in the corner said nothing. His silence filled the room more powerfully than the owner's shouting. Some customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few whispered to each other. One voice, low but clear, reached a nearby table. "Do you know who that is?" The words passed from ear to ear, growing softer but sharper with each repetition. The owner didn't hear. He was still grinning, pleased with himself, thinking he'd won the room. See? Legends only exist in movies. In real life, they're just tired old men drinking coffee in corners. His laugh rang hollow, bouncing off the walls with no one to catch it. The man in the corner placed his mug down gently, eyes steady on the owner. The silence that followed was suffocating. No one dared speak. Even the neon buzz outside seemed louder, like the world itself was holding its breath. Then came another sound, distant at first, so faint it could have been mistaken for thunder. A low, steady vibration, rolling closer, heads tilted toward the windows. The owner was too busy with his performance to notice. But the man in the corner did. His eyes flicked toward the glass, calm but knowing. The sound grew. Engines. Dozens of them. The rumble thickened into a growl that made the windows shiver and the neon light flicker. The laughter stopped entirely now. Every head in the diner turned as the vibration became undeniable. Out in the parking lot, headlights swung across the gravel. Motorcycles, one after another, pulling into the lot. Leather vests caught the light. Chrome gleamed. The name on their backs was unmistakable, even from inside. Hell's Angels. The man in the corner exhaled once, slow and certain, like a man acknowledging an old rhythm returning. The door handle rattled. The room froze. And then the door began to open. Just wondering, where are you watching from? Write it down, Bello. The door cracked open and then stalled, held halfway, as though the night itself were waiting for permission to step inside. The engines outside kept idling, their rumbles sliding under the floorboards and into every table leg, glasses faintly trembling in their racks. The sound was a low, steady presence, more felt in the chest than heard in the ear. Every diner in the room tilted their heads toward the window. The owner noticed the shift immediately, and it stung him. Attention was currency to him, and now it was being stolen by the noise outside. He clapped his hands once, loud and theatrical, as though summoning back the spotlight. "Don't go getting nervous," he boomed. "Saturday nights, boys like to make a racket. That's all this is." His laugh was big and forced, a balloon ready to pop. "Let's not forget the show we got right here." His finger jabbed toward the corner booth. The man in the jacket sat still, head slightly bowed again, one hand resting on the mug. The owner saw the stillness and mistook it for weakness. He pushed harder. "You know what I see?" he said, voice pitched higher now. "I see somebody clinging to old stories, hoping folks still believe them. I see an old man living off reruns." He scanned the room for approval. "You believe those movie fights? You believe the tough guy poses? Real life doesn't cut away when the hits land." A few chuckles answered, thin and nervous. The kind of laughter that dies the moment it leaves the mouth. People shifted in their seats, caught between politeness and discomfort. At the counter, a man in a hunting cap set down his fork without realizing he'd stopped eating. The busboy, the same skinny kid who'd spoken up before, tried again. His voice shook, but it carried. "He's not bothering anyone, boss. He just wanted coffee." The owner spun on him, face flushed red. "And I said it once already. You stay out of it." His finger jabbed the air. "You want to keep a paycheck? Then you learn respect." The words snapped like a whip. The kid dropped his gaze, shame coloring his cheeks. That single word, respect, hung wrong in the air. People in the booths glanced at one another, unspoken questions darting between their eyes. Even those who didn't recognize the man in the corner felt something was off. The silence that followed didn't feel passive. It felt expectant. The owner, desperate to keep his grip, raised his voice louder. We all had posters on our walls once. We all believed in fairy tales. But we grow up. We pay bills. We work jobs. We don't live in stories. He leaned across a table, lowering his tone for effect. And if you think a story is going to protect you in here, you're in the wrong place. The murmur started again, quieter, sharper this time. A woman near the window whispered, "Do you know who that is?" Another voice picked it up. "That's him." Someone else? "No way." The rumor moved like water in cracks, spreading without direction, yet filling every space. The owner missed it. His focus was locked on the man in the corner, the still figure who hadn't risen to take the bait. "Tell them," he said, his voice practically sneering. "Go ahead. Tell them your legend walked in here. Or can't you even say it yourself?" The man lifted his head. His eyes met the owner's, calm, steady. He said nothing. That silence pressed harder than any insult could. Phones that had been raised slowly lowered. A teenager put his hand over the camera lens without knowing why. The waitress, Megan, finally spoke. Her voice was careful, neutral. "He paid already," she said. The words landed like a defense. The owner turned on her too. "For coffee," he spat. "The cheapest thing on the menu." The man in the booth reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded bill, and set it under the mug. More than enough. The gesture was quiet, deliberate, and final. But the owner couldn't leave it there. He stepped closer, the performance clinging to him like sweat. "This isn't about money," he snapped. "It's about not hiding behind a name. It's about being real. Right here. Right now." The kid busboy muttered, almost pleading, "Boss, please." The owner rounded on him again. "Enough." Last warning, he turned back to the booth, pointing toward the door. "Out! You hear me? You're done here." The room shifted. Not physically, no one stood, but shoulders tightened, breaths caught. A glass slipped from someone's fingers, clinking against the tabletop without breaking. The atmosphere felt stretched, as if one wrong word might split it in two. The man in the corner didn't rise. He didn't argue. He looked past the owner, through the window. Outside, the figures had dismounted. Leather vests glowed in the neon wash. Chrome caught every reflection. Boots ground against gravel. These weren't boys looking for a meal. They moved with the order of people who already knew where they were going. The owner noticed the glances drifting to the glass again. His voice rose in panic. "Don't look at them. Look at me." He stepped closer to the booth, his hand hovering inches above the man's shoulder. "I said, out." The door swung inward before his palm touched down. The air rushed in with the smell of fuel and night. Boots hit tile. A leather vest filled the doorway, patches clear under the fluorescent lights. The biker's gaze swept the room, not searching for trouble but locating what he expected. Every conversation collapsed. Forks froze. Breaths locked. The owner's hand still hovered above the shoulder it hadn't touched. And in that suspended moment, the silence so taut it seemed to hum, the man in the booth finally opened his mouth. The first biker stepped inside without hurry, shoulders wide, boots leaving flecks of gravel across the floor tiles. His vest carried the patch that needed no explanation. Hell's Angels. Even those who had only seen it on television knew enough to fall silent. The door hung open behind him, framing the glow of headlights and the silhouettes of more men waiting in the lot. Engines idled outside, steady as a heartbeat. The owner froze. His hand, still hovering inches above the man in the booth, trembled just enough for people to notice. His grin faltered, then snapped back on, brittle as glass. "We don't serve gangs here," he barked, trying to seize the room again. Plenty of other joints down the road." No one laughed this time. The biker ignored him. His gaze swept the room once, casual, then locked onto the man in the corner. Recognition lit his face. His mouth opened slightly. Then he muttered toward the doorway. "He's here." Two more bikers entered. The neon sign outside caught their tattoos, their chains, the worn leather of men used to living by their own rules. They didn't stomp in like aggressors. They moved like men arriving exactly where they were supposed to be. A ripple of whispers cut through the restaurant. "It's them!" "No way!" A girl near the counter grabbed her friend's arm. The busboy stepped back until he bumped the counter, his throat dry. The owner forced a chuckle. "Cute reunion," he said too loudly. "But this is my place." And I said, "Out." He jabbed a finger at the booth. "You too, cowboy. Curtains down." The biker nearest the booth grinned, slow, humorless. He finally turned toward the owner. "You don't even know who you're talking to, do you?" His tone was calm, almost kind, but it carried the weight of warning. The owner scoffed, his sweat betraying him. "Some washed-up movie cowboy?" "Yeah, I know the type." That was when the murmur sharpened into clarity. One voice, emboldened by the safety of numbers, said it aloud. "That's Chuck Norris." The name spread like fire. Heads snapped toward the booth. Some people gasped, others shook their heads but couldn't look away. A man at the counter whispered a curse. Megan, the waitress, pressed a hand to her mouth. The busboy whispered again, almost reverent. "It's him." The owner laughed too hard. "Chuck Norris? Don't make me laugh. That's just a meme, an internet joke, not some old man hiding in a diner." But even as he said it, his voice cracked. Nobody bought it anymore. Everyone could see it now, not in fame or in posters, but in the way the bikers looked at him. Respect, real and unguarded, radiated from them. Something they wouldn't show lightly, and never to a fraud. The man in the booth hadn't moved through any of it. His silence was the loudest thing in the room. Even the bikers, men who lived in noise, seemed to adjust themselves to it. The owner grew desperate. He jabbed his finger again. "Fine. If you're supposed to be him, then say it. Prove it." The diner held its breath. Forks froze. Phones lowered. The engines outside clicked off, one by one, until the silence left behind was thick enough to feel in the chest. The last biker stepped in and shut the door firmly behind him. The air inside sealed tight. The man in the booth finally moved. He pushed the mug gently aside, straightened in his seat, and then rose. He did it slowly, deliberately, each motion exact, as though gravity had different rules for him. The shift was small but absolute. The entire room leaned with it. For the first time all night, he spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, clear enough that everyone heard. "Be careful what you call a story." The door swung open fully this time, and the night came in with it. Cold air carrying exhaust fumes, the metallic tang of oil, and the low thunder of motorcycles still idling outside. The sound wasn't just noise anymore. It was presence. A physical vibration that made glasses on the counter tremble. Every head turned toward the entrance, and what they saw froze the room in place. A man stepped through first, broad-shouldered, leather vest stitched with the unmistakable patch. Hell's Angels. Even people who had never been closer to the club than a TV documentary recognized it instantly. The fluorescent lights made the patch glow stark and red, the kind of symbol that carried its own gravity. His boots dropped flecks of gravel onto the linoleum, and the scrape of them against the floor seemed too loud in the hush. He didn't storm in, didn't snarl. He just entered like a man who belonged wherever he decided to stand. Behind him, more shadows shifted. Two others followed, helmets dangling from their hands, tattoos glinting in the neon. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. The owner froze mid-gesture, his hand still hovering above the quiet man's shoulder. His grin tried to hold, but it was cracking, corners twitching, jaw clenching. He forced out a laugh that landed flat. "Evening, gentlemen," he said, voice pitched higher than he intended. "Full house tonight. You'll want to try the roadhouse up the highway." No one moved. The first biker's eyes swept the room once, pausing only briefly on the faces staring back. Then his gaze landed on the corner booth. For a moment, his expression softened with recognition. He tipped his head just slightly, and his words came out low but clear. "He's here." The air in the diner shifted. A mother by the window pressed her hand against her child's arm. The busboy, still holding a fork he'd stooped to pick up, forgot to stand. Someone near the counter muttered a curse under their breath. The whisper spread fast. "They know him." The owner misread it all. He smacked the back of a chair and barked, "House rules! No loitering, no filming, and no gang meetings. This is a family place." He tried to laugh again, but it cracked halfway out. "We keep it clean in here." The biker didn't bother answering him. He turned slightly, looking at the man in the booth, then back to the owner. "You don't know who you're talking to," he said evenly. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried like stone rolling down a hill. He looked back to the booth. "Chuck's our friend." The name didn't explode. It settled. It spread across the room like a tide. First, disbelief. Then, realization. A woman near the counter put her hand to her mouth. The teenager who had been filming lowered his phone without meaning to. The trucker in the camo cap stared hard, as if willing his eyes to confirm what his ears had just heard. People began to regret. You could see it in their faces, the way laughter turned sour in memory, the way their earlier smiles now felt like complicity. Megan the waitress pressed her lips tight and looked down at her tray, ashamed she hadn't spoken up sooner. The busboy whispered, almost to himself, "I told you," but no one answered. The owner tried to recover. "Friend, huh?" His tone cracked at the edges. "Must be nice to have fans. But let's not kid ourselves. He's an actor, a stuntman, all that fighting, all that tough guy stuff. It's make-believe." He swept his hand to the room as if asking for agreement. "Legends are just stories." No one laughed. Not this time. The older biker took a slow step forward. He didn't raise his fists, didn't square his shoulders. He didn't need to. His presence filled the silence, and the silence gave it weight. "That man's earned respect," he said. "If you had any, you'd show it." He turned back to the booth. "We do." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Not cheers, not noise, but the shifting sound of people changing sides. The weight in the room was no longer behind the owner. It had slipped quietly across to the other table. The owner's face flushed. He tried to hold on to his performance, to look like he was still the one running the show. "He paid for coffee," he said loudly, his voice straining, "and sat here for an hour like he owned the place. I asked him to order or move along. That's it. That's all." The words sounded small, petty. The biker's eyes narrowed, though his voice stayed calm. "You put your hand on him," he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a fact, dropped into the room like a weight onto glass. The owner's hand twitched. He looked down at it as though seeing it for the first time, then pulled it back toward himself quickly. Too quickly. In the back, someone whispered, "Enough," and this time the word stuck. It ran through the room like a current. Forks were set down. Phones lowered. People weren't spectators anymore. They were witnesses. The owner's bravado faltered. He puffed out his chest, then let it sag. His laugh came out thin. So what? We gonna have a campfire story now? His words landed like stones, skipping once, then sinking. The younger biker, who had been hovering behind the older one, shifted forward, his hands restless, his face tight with something unsaid. His eyes went to Chuck, as if asking permission to speak. Chuck, still seated, gave the smallest nod. The biker swallowed, stepping closer to the center of the room. His voice shook but carried. You all don't know what he's done. You think it's movies, jokes, a story on the internet. But I owe that man my life. The owner laughed again, but weaker now, eyes darting. Nobody joined him. The biker's jaw tightened. And you, he pointed at the owner without shouting, just directing, you've got no idea who you tried to humiliate. The diner was still. The crowd leaned in. The owner, for the first time that night, had no comeback waiting. His mask of bravado was cracking, his eyes betraying what his voice could no longer hide. Fear. The younger biker took another breath. Let me tell you what happened. And just like that, the room tipped forward, caught in the pull of a story that promised to change everything. The younger biker's voice carried without force. You keep calling him an actor, he said, eyes pinned on the owner, but have you ever seen him fight for real? The words landed heavier than a shout would have. They weren't meant as a threat. They were an indictment. The owner chuckled, but it sounded hollow, sharp at the edges. Yeah, I've seen the tapes. Stage fighting, slow motion, cutaways. He swings, they fall. Smoke and mirrors. Movie magic. He shrugged, but the gesture was stiff, nervous. I know a fake when I see one. The older biker shifted his weight, nodding once to the younger man as if giving permission. The younger one drew a breath, shoulders tight, then loosened them. 5 years ago, he began, speaking to the room, though his eyes drifted toward the booth. We were out on the road near Bakersfield. Hot night. Too many miles. Everyone wired from cheap coffee and worse food. One of the locals in a jacked-up truck clipped one of our guys and tried to run for it. We boxed him in. His voice dipped, a memory thickening it. I thought I was about to prove myself. I pulled a knife. The busboy blinked, hand frozen on a tray. Megan, the waitress, stopped stacking glasses. No one in the room moved. He walked in, the biker continued, tipping his chin toward the booth. Not as a star, not as some name. Just a man getting a soda from a vending machine. He saw the knife in my hand, and he didn't hesitate. Didn't yell, didn't punch. He stepped between me and a mistake I wouldn't be able to take back. The biker touched his wrist with 2 fingers. He put his hand here. Just here. Twisted my grip so the blade pointed down. Said 2 words. Breathe. Stop. Not a command. A choice. And I put it down. The room exhaled as one. Even those who'd laughed before now stared with something closer to shame. He called the medics for the guy in the truck, the biker went on, his throat tightening. Sat with him while we cooled off, while the heat left our skulls. Told the cops exactly what happened, but didn't hang us out to dry. Then he made me apologize to the man I'd just tried to hurt. He half smiled at the memory, raw but proud. I wanted to spit. I wanted to vanish. But I said it. And I meant it. The owner snorted, trying to claw back the stage. Sweet little redemption story, he said, but his tone had no traction. Doesn't change what he is. An actor. A stuntman. He gestured at the booth. My God, you're all buying into a bedtime tale. The younger biker ignored him. His voice steadied. He gave me a card. Not a lawyer, not a preacher. A Jim. Said if I wanted to carry weight, I had to learn what to do with it. Said I didn't have to be the worst decision I ever made. I went. First week, I puked. Second week, I stopped acting like a dog on a chain. 6 months later, I was different, and people saw it. That man bought me the chance to live another life. That isn't Hollywood. The older biker folded his arms and nodded once, as if the story needed no more proof. The crowd shifted, shoulders lowering, eyes softening. Regret curdled into respect. Chuck still hadn't spoken. He hadn't smiled, hadn't basked in the praise. He listened the way he had all night, present, grounded, like every word was being weighed. That silence was heavier than the owner's every outburst. The owner tried again, voice fraying. He's still just an actor. A face on a poster. You all worship a meme. He threw the last word like an insult, but it boomeranged back as a plea. The younger biker repeated his question, softer this time. Have you ever seen him fight for real? The echo didn't sound like a challenge now. It sounded like pity. Then the booth shifted. Chuck pushed his mug gently aside and rose. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just steady, controlled, exact. Gravity seemed to cooperate with him. His frame wasn't imposing, but the air bent differently around him once he stood. Conversations didn't just stop. They surrendered. He didn't ball his fists. He didn't widen his stance. He looked at the owner the way a craftsman looks at a crooked wall, calm and calculating. The years were visible in his face, lines from sun and sweat, but nothing fragile lived there. The owner tried to hold his gaze, but his eyes skittered away, then snapped back. His chest lifted as though he wanted to shout, but no sound came. He lifted his hand like he meant to gesture, but had no gesture to give. Chuck took a single step forward. Just one. The distance between them collapsed into honesty. The owner's throat bobbed. I was just, he began, but the words dried in his mouth. Chuck's voice came, quiet but firm. Enough. It wasn't a scold, not a threat. It was a line drawn clean across the night. The room obeyed it. Even the buzz of the neon seemed to fade. The older biker's voice filled the silence. That's your answer, he told the owner softly. This is what real looks like. Doesn't start with fists. The younger biker swallowed, then added, he didn't make me smaller. He made the moment smaller, so I could walk past it. From the back, a woman whispered, that's right. Another voice answered, yeah. Agreement rippled outward, unplanned but solid. The owner sagged, his mask broken. He tried one last time. Internet jokes. Bedtime stories. But the word jokes cracked in his throat. Chuck didn't rescue him. He let the silence stand like a mirror. And then, from the kitchen, the door swung open. The cook stepped out, apron balled in his hands, eyes bright with something unspoken. His voice shook as he addressed Chuck directly. My father watched you when he was in the hospital. Said your fights kept his mind off the pain. Can I? His words stumbled, but the weight of them landed harder than any insult. Every head turned, the owner's mouth shut, and for the first time that night, the room wasn't waiting to laugh. It was waiting to see how Chuck would answer. The cook stepped out, apron balled in his fists, eyes wet but steady. My father, he watched you when he was in the hospital, he said to Chuck. Said your fights kept his mind off the pain. He died last spring. I just wanted to thank you. He didn't come closer. He didn't ask for a photo. Just stood there, apron clutched like a flag at half-mast. Chuck bowed his head slightly. I'm sorry for your loss, he said. I'm glad he found a little air. The cook nodded, swallowed hard, and slipped back through the swinging door. The owner tried to seize the pause. "Listen," he blurted, voice frayed. "I didn't mean for this to... I just have rules, you know? It's my house. Chuck turned fully toward him, his face calm, unreadable. "You wanted a room to watch you," he said. "You got it. But the room has to live here tomorrow. So do you." The words stripped the owner's excuses bare. He opened his mouth, closed it, then forced out, "I got it wrong. Sir, I shouldn't have said what I did. I'm sorry." He looked out over the tables, searching for somewhere to hide, but found none. "To all of you, I'm sorry." Silence met him. Not cold, not cruel, just final. Chuck reached for his jacket, pulled out cash, and laid it on the table, more than the coffee needed. He slid the check toward Megan. "For the kid's next shift," he said, nodding at the busboy. The boy's eyes widened, and for the first time that night, he smiled. The older biker glanced at the owner. "You might want to write down a new rule," he said. "One about letting a man sit in peace." The owner nodded quickly, his face pale. "Yeah," he muttered. "Yeah, I will." Chuck moved toward the door. He paused, turned back once more. His voice was quiet, steady. "Real strength isn't humiliating people," he said. "It's protecting them." The line landed heavier than any punch. No one clapped. They didn't need to. The bikers filed out behind him, their boots steady, leather creaking softly. The engines outside lit up one by one, not in a roar, but in a patient rhythm, until their tail lights disappeared into the dark. Inside, the diner breathed again. Plates shifted. Forks clinked. Megan stacked cups with steady hands. The cook returned, apron tied back on, meeting the owner's eyes just long enough for a quiet nod. The busboy leaned against the counter, still smiling at the folded bill tucked in his pocket. The owner straightened the crooked open sign, then lowered his hand, staring at the empty booth. A circle of coffee stained the laminate where the mug had sat, dark against the pale surface. And the people who had laughed earlier now sat in silence, phones buzzing with half-written posts. They knew no picture or caption would capture what they had just seen. Because it wasn't about fame, or bikers, or even a legend's name. It was about the sentence left behind. Real strength isn't the noise of victory. It's the quiet left in the room after someone has been protected.